The galaxy was wide, full of stars, and full of life. Civilizations rose and fell across thousands of worlds. Empires fought wars, built fleets, and claimed new systems. Yet, for all their power, for all their pride, there was one thing that every species feared. It was not a superweapon. It was not an ancient empire. It was not even a rival army. No, what they feared most were the alpha cubs. The alpha cubs were not like normal creatures. They were young, only infants of a beast that was never meant to be tamed. Even at birth, their size was greater than most ship's fighters. Their teeth could bite through armor. Their claws could rip apart steel. Their eyes glowed in the dark, watching, waiting, hunting. Legends of the alpha cubs were whispered in every corner of the galaxy. Whole fleets had gone missing after wandering too close to a planet where cubs had been sighted, on the ruined worlds left behind. Black scars cut across the land, as if the soil itself had been shredded by claws the size of towers. The survivors, few as they were, spoke with shaking voices about what they had seen. They told of laughter, not human laughter, but high, strange sound that echoed from the cubs as they played with their prey. They did not kill because they were hungry. They killed because it was fun, and that was what terrified the galaxy most. These were only the cubs, not yet full grown, not yet at the height of their power. If the cubs could do such things as infants, what would happen when they grew into adults? Few dared to even think about it. Across the galaxy, a simple rule was known: never go near the alpha cubs. It did not matter what riches might be found on their planets. It did not matter what resources lay buried under the soil. No empire, no trader, no explorer was foolish enough to stay when the cubs appeared. To stay was to die. The great races all agreed on this rule. The proud, warlike Rasu, who believed no enemy could defeat them, still fled at the mention of cubs. The wise and ancient Valen, who thought they had mastered every mystery of life, refused to study the cubs. Even the cold machine intelligence of the Kyrix, who had no fear of flesh or blood, changed their patrol routes to avoid them. All feared, all obeyed the rule, but fear always grows when stories spread, and the stories of the alpha cubs spread far. Every year, the tales became darker, more twisted. Some said the cubs were not born naturally, but were the weapons of some long-dead empire. Others whispered that the cubs were not animals at all, but spirits of war, born only to bring death. There were even those who believed the cubs were the true rulers of the galaxy, allowing empires to rise and fall only for their own amusement. And so the fear grew. It became a shadow that stretched across the stars. When traders traveled between systems, they checked their charts again and again to make sure no cubs had been sighted nearby. When fleets prepared for war, generals made certain their campaigns stayed far from cub worlds. And when parents told stories to their children, they used the alpha cubs as warnings. Behave or the cubs will come. Yet behind every shadow is a question. And in this case, the question was simple. Were the cubs truly as dangerous as the story said? Or was fear itself feeding the legend, making them seem larger and darker than they truly were? Most beings in the galaxy never wanted to learn the truth. To them, it was enough to fear and to stay away. But not everyone thought this way. Somewhere, far away from the great halls of alien power, there was one human who did not tremble at the name of the alpha cubs. He had heard the same stories. He had seen the same warnings. And yet, instead of fear, he had only curiosity. This human was not a soldier of a great empire. He was not a scientist seeking fame. He was not even a leader with armies to command. He was only one man, alone, wandering the stars with nothing but his small ship and his stubborn heart. His name was Elias. When others spoke of the cubs as nightmares, Elias listened carefully. But when they told him to never go near, he smiled quietly to himself. To him, The idea that such creatures were beyond reason did not make sense. He had grown up on Earth, where even the wildest animals could be tamed with patience, trust, and care. Wolves, lions, tigers, all had once been feared. Yet humans had walked beside them, studied them, and even turned them into friends. Elias asked himself a simple question. If humans could tame wolves and call them dogs, if they could tame horses and ride them, then why not the alpha cubs? The galaxy would have called him mad. They would have called him a fool. But Elias did not listen, for in his heart, he carried a belief that no other race in the galaxy could understand. He did not see monsters. He did not see weapons. He did not see legends of war. He saw only good babies. And so, while the galaxy trembled, one human prepared a step where no one else dared. The story of fear was about to meet the story of courage, and that would change everything. The warning came before dawn on Outpost Delta 4. The alien staff of the station woke to alarms screaming through the metal halls. Messages flashed across every screen. Alpha Cubs sighted. Evacuate immediately. The aliens on the outpost had heard many kinds of warnings before. Pirates, storms, even enemy warships. But nothing struck fear into their hearts like this one. The Rasu commander, a tall being with hard scales, dropped his weapon in panic the moment the word Cubs appeared. The Valen scholars, normally calm and wise, scattered like frightened birds, packing their data into cases and rushing toward the shuttles. Every voice echoed the same cry. Run! Run before they arrive. But one man did not run. He was human. His name was Elias. He had been living on Delta for only 2 months, a guest, an outsider, a quiet observer. Most aliens still thought humans were weak, naive creatures who did not belong in the dangerous corners of the galaxy. They expected Elias to panic first, to beg for help, to join the rush to the shuttles. Instead, Elias walked calmly through the hall, as if the alarms were only background noise. He carried no weapon, no armor, nothing but a small bag slung across his shoulder. When the commander shouted at him, "Human, what are you doing? Leave now or you will die," Elias only smiled. "I just want to see them," he said. The aliens froze. See them? Had the human gone mad? Who in their right mind would want to meet Alpha Cubs? But Elias did not stop to argue. He left the safety of the station, stepping out onto the rocky surface of the nearby moon, where shadows stretched long under a pale sun. His boots crunched softly on the dust. He moved with steady steps, not fast, not slow, as though he were simply walking a familiar path. Behind him, the aliens watched through the station windows, whispering in disbelief. The horizon trembled. At first, it looked like a storm cloud rolling low across the land. Then, the sound reached them, a deep rumble, like mountains grinding against each other. The air seemed to shake. Rocks tumbled down from ridges. And then, from beyond the hills, the Cubs appeared. There were 3 of them. They were larger than cargo haulers, their shoulders towering like buildings. Their fur was dark and rough. Their eyes glowed bright yellow, and their teeth gleamed like metal blades. Each step they took cracked the ground. And though they were young, barely out of infancy, the power they carried was terrifying. The aliens inside the outpost screamed. Some fainted. The commander slammed the window shields closed so no one would have to watch their own doom. But a few, trembling, kept the glass clear. They wanted to see what would happen to the foolish human. Elias stood alone on the empty plain. He made no attempt to hide, no attempt to fight. He simply stood, waiting. The Cubs noticed him at once. They stopped, their glowing eyes fixed on the small figure of the human. One tilted its head, confused. Another growled, a sound so loud that the dust on the ground shook into patterns. The third crouched low, muscles rippling under its dark fur. The aliens watching from the outpost prepared to see blood. They imagined a human torn apart in a single swipe, his bones crushed, his body thrown aside like trash. They covered their eyes. But Elias did something no one expected. He raised his hand, slowly, gently, and waved. "Hello there," he said, his voice calm. The cubs froze. Their ears twitched. They did not rush forward. They did not attack. Instead, the one crouched low blinked its glowing eyes and let out a sound not of anger, but confusion. Elias took a step closer. Not fast, not threatening. Just one small step, then another. His boots crunched softly in the dust. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I just wanted to meet you." The first cub lowered its head to the ground, its hot breath blowing across him like a storm wind. Its teeth gleamed inches from his face. The aliens inside the outpost cried out, "He's dead! He's dead already!" But then something changed. The cub sniffed him. Once, twice. Its nose twitched. Its glowing eyes softened. And then, slowly, carefully, it pressed its massive nose against Elias's hand. Elias smiled. He patted the cub gently, as if greeting a puppy back on Earth. "There you go," he whispered. "Good baby." The aliens watching could not believe their eyes. The second cub, curious, stepped forward. It sniffed Elias's shoulder, then let out a low sound, almost like a purr, though deeper, shaking the ground. The third cub circled him, cautious, before lowering itself to the dust and rolling onto its side like a giant playful animal. Elias laughed softly. "So that's it. You're not monsters. You're just little ones who don't understand your own strength." The aliens were silent. None of them spoke. None of them breathed. The scene before them shattered every belief they had carried for centuries. The cubs were supposed to be terror, death, destruction. But here they were, acting like children before a man who saw them without fear. Elias sat down on the ground, cross-legged, like one would sit among puppies. The cubs gathered around him, sniffing, nudging, one even placing its giant paw gently beside him. "Good babies," he said again. Inside the outpost, arguments broke out. "This is a trick," one Valen cried. "He will die any second," another insisted. "No," whispered the Rasa commander, his voice unsteady. "Look at them. They are not attacking. They are obeying him." The realization spread like fire through the station. If a human could walk unarmed into the presence of alpha cubs and survive, then what did that mean? What secret power did this fragile species carry? What was humanity hiding from a galaxy? The cubs, meanwhile, were already growing attached. One pressed its massive head against Elias's shoulder, nearly knocking him over. He laughed, bracing himself with both hands. Another nudged his bag, sniffing for food. The third rolled on its back again, huge paws waving in the air like a playful child begging for attention. Elias knew the truth then. They were feared because they were misunderstood. The cubs were dangerous, yes, too strong, too wild, but they were not evil. They were only children who had never been treated with kindness. And now, for the first time in all of history, they had found someone who did not see monsters, someone who did not tremble, someone who called them only one thing: good babies. Far away, the galaxy trembled at the news of their sighting. Fleets changed course. Governments sent warnings. Traders abandoned routes. All feared the Alpha Cubs had awakened again. But no one not yet knew the truth. No one knew that the Cubs had already chosen their human. The plane was quiet now. The alarms had stopped, not because the danger had passed, but because the aliens inside Outpost Delta for no longer knew what to do. They simply stared, wide-eyed and frozen, at the sight before them. 3 Alpha Cubs, the most feared creatures in the galaxy, were circling a single human. By all logic, by all history, by every story ever told, The man should already been dead. His body should have been torn apart and scattered across the rocks. That was what alpha cubs did. But Elias was still alive. More than alive. He was smiling. His hand rested on the rough fur of the first cub, the one that had sniffed him first. Its head was lowered, pressing gently against his side as though seeking comfort. The second cub stood tall behind him, its glowing eyes fixed on a human, like a guardian watching over something precious. And the third, this was the most shocking of all, lay stretched out in the dust, rolling onto its back, paws up, tail swishing back and forth like a playful child. The aliens whispered in disbelief. This is impossible. No one can control them. They are pretending. The human will die any moment. Yet the moment never came. Elias did not move with fear. His voice was steady, calm, as he spoke softly to the cubs. There now, see? I'm not your enemy. You don't need to be afraid. The first cub let out a low sound, halfway between a growl and a purr, that made the dust tremble around them. The sound should have terrified anyone, but Elias only laughed, reaching up to scratch behind the creature's ear. The cub closed its glowing eyes and leaned into his touch. Inside the outpost, one Valen scholar gripped the edge of the window, so hard his hands shook. Do you see this? They are responding to him, like trained animals. The Rasu commander snarled. No, not like trained animals. Like companions. Companions. The word felt dangerous. Unthinkable. The alpha cubs were not supposed to have companions. They were chaos given flesh, fury given teeth. Yet what the aliens saw before them was not chaos. It was trust. Elias sat down in the dust, cross-legged. The second cub immediately lowered its massive body to sit beside him, its shoulder rising like a dark wall. The third cub rolled closer, pushing its huge head onto his lap. Elias chuckled, both hands buried in the thick fur, as if petting a dog back on earth. Good babies, he said softly. The words carried on the wind. The aliens heard them, and they did not understand. How could anyone call these nightmares babies? But Elias meant every word. He looked at their glowing eyes, their playful nudges, their clumsy strength, and all he saw was innocence. The cubs reacted with joy. One licked his face with a tongue the size of a shield, nearly knocking him backward. Elias laughed harder, wiping the dust and saliva from his cheek. Another nudged his bag, sniffing for food, and let out a huff when it found nothing. The third simply curled closer, its breathing heavy, as though content to sleep at his side. The aliens were silent now. Even the constant hum of the station seemed to fade. They could not look away. What they were seeing broke every truth they thought they knew. Finally, the youngest scholar spoke, voice trembling. If the human can tame the cubs... Silence, the commander snapped. His scaled hands trembled, betraying his own fear. This is not taming. This is unnatural. But deep inside, the commander knew it was more than that. He had seen warriors try to tame the cubs before. Entire legions had marched with weapons and machines, hoping to capture the beasts. Every one of those attempts had ended the same way, with blood, with ruins, with silence. The cubs could never be chained. They could never be bent to the will of others. Until now, until a human arrived. Outside, Elias pulled a small flask of water from his bag. He uncapped it, taking a sip, then held it out. The second cub sniffed the flask, snorted, and then, carefully, opened its mouth to let him pour a little inside. The alien scholars gasped as the creature drank like a child. Elias grinned. See? Even good babies get thirsty. The cubs shifted around him. One curled closer. Another laid its paw protectively across the ground beside him, claws sinking into the dirt without malice. It was a silent gesture, as if to warn the world, this human is ours. The aliens understood the meaning instantly. They looked at each other in terror. If the cubs had chosen a human, if they saw him not as prey but as part of their pack, then what would that mean for the galaxy? A single human, bonded with 3 alpha cubs, could hold the strength to topple entire fleets. Not even the strongest empires could stand against such power. The thought spread like fire among the observers, each imagining the nightmare humanity rising to rule with monsters at their side. But Elias never thought of power. He was not a conqueror. He did not care for fleets or empires. All he saw were 3 lonely children who needed kindness. Hours passed, though it felt like moments. Elias played with them as if they were pups. He tossed rocks, and the cubs bounded after them, their heavy steps shaking the ground. He scratched their ears, patted their noses, even leaned against one like a living wall when he grew tired. The cubs purred, rumbled, and dozed in turns, always circling close around him. Inside the station, the aliens argued in hushed tones. Some wanted to record the event and send it to their governments. Others wanted to keep it secret, fearing what would happen if the galaxy knew. In the end, they all knew the truth. The story would spread no matter what they did. Something this shocking could not be hidden. Sooner or later, the galaxy would hear the human who sat among the alpha cubs and called them babies. As the sun lowered on the horizon, painting the rocks in long shadows, Elias rested his back against one cub's warm body. His eyes were calm. His smile was soft. "You're not monsters," he whispered to them. "You've just never been loved." The cubs reacted with a deep sound, something between a roar and a purr, that shook the plane. To Elias, it sounded like agreement. To the aliens, it sounded like the beginning of a new age. For the first time in history, the alpha cubs had not brought death. They had not destroyed. They had not torn the world apart. For the first time, they had chosen. And their choice was a human. News traveled fast in the galaxy. Too fast. Before the sun had set on Outpost Delta 4, the first messages had already left the system. By the time Elias was resting against the alpha cubs, stories were flying through trade routes, pirate channels, and even government networks. A human walked among the cubs. The cubs did not kill. The cubs chose him. Most species did not believe the first reports. The Rasu warlords dismissed it as a lie. "No living thing can stand before the cubs," they growled. "This is human propaganda, a trick to make their weak species seem strong." The Valen councils, wise and patient, studied the reports carefully. Their scholars whispered, "If this is true, then the balance of the galaxy has changed. Forever." The Kirik's machine minds reacted coldly. Their logic grids flashed warnings of instability. If humans can bond with the cubs, their potential for domination increases by 60,000%. All calculations predict chaos. Even the smaller species, traders, colonists, and drifters, were shaken. For generations, parents had told their children stories of the cubs as nightmares, as shadows waiting to strike. Now those same children asked, if a human can pet one, are they really monsters? The shockwave of doubt moved faster than light. On Delta, for the aliens inside the outpost finally broke their silence. Arguments filled the halls. "We must send proof to our leaders," cried one Valen scholar, clutching the recording device. "No," barked the Rasa commander. "If the empires know, they will come here. They will fight for control of the cubs. They will destroy us all." "But it is already spreading," the scholar answered. "Rumors move faster than fleets." They all turned their eyes to the window again. Outside, the 3 cubs still circled the human. He leaned against one, laughing as another nudged him with its nose. The sight burned into their minds. The commander's voice shook. "The galaxy will not allow this. A human bonded with cubs? They will see him as a threat. They will kill him before he can use that power. But even as he said it, a part of him doubted. He had seen how the cubs reacted to the man. Killing him might not be so simple. Meanwhile, far away on the Rasa homeworld, the warlords gathered in a dark hall built of stone and steel. Their armor clattered as they argued. "This cannot stand," roared one. "If humans command the cubs, no empire is safe." "They must be destroyed," growled another. "Both the human and the beasts." Yet one warlord, older and quieter, spoke a different thought. "Perhaps we should not fear the human. Perhaps we should fear what it means about humans. If one can tame the cubs, what are the rest capable of?" The thoughts silenced the room. On the Valen world of silver towers, the council debated in whispers. They did not speak of war, but of philosophy. "We have always believed the cubs were beyond reason," one elder said. "But perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps fear blinded us." Another elder frowned. "Or perhaps humans see what we cannot. They have a way of bonding with life around them. Wolves, horses, even the wild seas of their homeworld. They turn them all into allies. Maybe this is simply their nature." If it was true, the elders agreed, the galaxy had underestimated humanity. The Kirik's machine minds were less subtle. Their vast data networks hummed as they processed reports. Cold conclusions appeared on screens across their fleets. Probability high. Humans contain hidden ability for influence. If alpha cubs submit to them, humans may rise as dominant species. Recommendation: monitor humans. Prepare countermeasures. And so the shockwave spread, not just of fear, but of possibility. Back on Delta, for the outpost had become a prison of silence. None dared step outside. The cubs might accept the human, but what of the rest? Would they tolerate other aliens? Or would they kill without hesitation? Hours passed. Elias remained among the cubs, as calm as if sitting in a garden. He fed them scraps of dried fruit from his bag, laughing when their enormous tongues scooped up the food. They played with him, batting at stones, nudging his shoulder, growling in a low, gentle way that only he seemed to understand. Inside the outpost, the commander finally asked the question everyone had avoided. What if they follow him? The thought struck like lightning. If the cubs followed the human, if they left this moon and traveled with him, the galaxy would never be the same. A Valen scholar shook his head. It is impossible. Cubs never leave their den. But another whispered, and yet they never played with anyone before, until him. That night, the message reached Earth. The human governments reacted with disbelief. Some laughed at the reports, calling them alien lies. But others looked closely, recognizing the man in the images. Elias, one whispered. He always was stubborn. On Earth, people did not fear the story. They did not see a monster at all. They saw what Elias saw, giant children who needed care. Many even cheered, calling him a hero, a true human who proved once again that their species was not weak, but strong in a different way, strong in heart. Still, not all humans agreed. Military leaders feared the consequences. If the cubs followed Elias, every alien empire would see them as a weapon. And if war came, humanity might be dragged into battles it could never win. So even on Earth, the story caused division. Some wanted to protect Elias. Some wanted to hide him. Some wanted to use him. And far beyond Earth, alien fleets shifted in the dark, already planning. On Delta, for Elias finally lay back, the cubs forming a protective circle around him. Their glowing eyes faded to soft yellow as they drifted to sleep, purring like mountains at rest. Elias closed his eyes too, calm, content. He had no idea that every move he made was already shaking the galaxy. In the morning, the first ships would arrive. Scouts, spies, perhaps even assassins. They would not come to learn. They would come to test, to see if the rumors were true. The outpost commander whispered to himself, staring at the humans sleeping among monsters. The galaxy trembled before the cubs, but now it trembles before him. The next day on Delta began with silence. No alarms, no shouts, no movement from the outpost. Inside, the aliens barely spoke. They only stared through the windows at the impossible scene beyond. Elias was still alive. More than alive, he was laughing. The 3 alpha cubs followed him across the rocky plain like oversized shadows. They trailed behind him when he walked, nudged him with their noses when he stopped, and growled in playful tones when he threw stones at them to chase. The ground shook with every bound of their massive paws, yet the man treated them as if they were no more dangerous than puppies on earth. At one point, Elias sat on the ground and pulled a small pack of dried fruit from his bag. He tossed a piece into the air. One cub leapt high, jaws snapping shut around it. Elias clapped his hands, cheering, "Good baby!" The cub rumbled with pride, lowering its head for another piece. Soon, the others crowded close, waiting their turn. Elias shared his food, laughing when a tongue the size of his arm nearly pulled the bag from his hands. The aliens inside the outpost could not look away. Every movement of the cubs had always meant death. Now they saw something else: trust, play, even joy. The Valen scholar whispered, "He is feeding them." They let him feed them. The Rasu commander growled, "It is not feeding, it is training. He is making them loyal." Another voice trembled, "No, not training, bonding." Outside, the bond grew deeper. After eating, the cubs began to play rough. One rolled on its side, swiping its paw through the dust. Another shoved its head against Elias, sending him stumbling. Instead of panicking, Elias shoved back with both hands, laughing. The cub let out a booming noise, almost like laughter of its own. Elias dropped to the ground, wrestling playfully with the creature's giant snout. He was no match for its strength, yet the cub was gentle, never pressing too hard, never letting its claws cut. The other 2 circled close, tails swishing like excited children watching a game. When the play ended, all 3 cubs crowded around Elias, forming a protective wall of fur and muscle. He leaned back against one, resting his head on its shoulder. Its deep breathing rumbled through his body like a drumbeat. Elias smiled. "Good babies," he whispered again. The cubs purred in answer, a sound so low and heavy that the ground trembled. Inside the outpost, the aliens argued. Some said the human had discovered magic. Others claimed he carried some hidden weapon. None could accept the simple truth that he had given kindness where all others had shown fear. Still, the bond was clear. The cubs did not see Elias as prey. They saw him as theirs. And when dusk came, the bond grew stronger still. The plain grew cold. Winds cut across the rocks, carrying dust and chill. Elias sat with his arms wrapped tight, shivering in the night air. The cubs noticed. Without hesitation, the largest curled its body around him. Its thick fur blocked the wind. Its heat wrapped around him like a living blanket. Another lowered its head, nudging his side gently, as if worried he might break. The third lay close to his feet, eyes glowing in the dark, standing guard while the others slept. Elias looked up at the stars, warm now between the massive bodies of creatures that had once terrified the galaxy. He thought of Earth, of campfires, of sitting with dogs or horses that had trusted him the same way. They only wanted someone to stay with them, he whispered. The aliens watching could not understand. To them, this was madness. But deep in their hearts, they knew it was real. The bond was there. By the time morning came, the cubs were his shadow. They followed him when he walked. They waited when he rested. They came when he called. They did not wander. They did not leave. The galaxy had called them monsters. Now, they had found their human, and the bond between them was unbreakable. The news spread faster than light. A human had lived through a night beside the Alpha Cubs. Not only survived, but bonded with them across the station networks. Alien voices filled the channels with disbelief and fear. The Cubs had always been wild storms of destruction, but now they walked like tame beasts beside one man. Not everyone was amazed. Some were angry. In the control chamber of Delta 4, the Rasu commander slammed his fist against the table. His scaled face twitched with rage. This cannot continue. If the beasts obey him, then he holds a weapon greater than any fleet. One human cannot be allowed to command monsters. The Valen scholar tried to reason. Perhaps we can learn from him. Perhaps the Cubs are not monsters at all. But the commander would not listen. I will test him. I will show this is nothing but luck. Orders were sent. That evening, while Elias walked the rocky field with the Cubs at his side, the trap was set. Small machines, shaped like insects, crawled across the plain. They carried sparks of fire within them. Their orders were simple. Ignite the ground, surround the human, drive the Cubs into madness. Elias felt the air shift before he saw the danger. Smoke rose from the dry rocks. Flames snapped to life in a circle around him. The Cubs stiffened at once, eyes glowing in the light, muscles tightening. Their low growls rumbled like thunder. The aliens inside the outpost leaned forward, holding their breath. Would the Cubs turn on him now? Would fire break the bond? Elias coughed as smoke stung his throat. He lifted his hands, palms open. Easy, babies. Easy. The flames climbed higher. The heat pressed close. The Cubs roared, their voices shaking the night sky. Their instincts screamed at them to strike, to flee, to kill. But in the middle of the circle stood Elias, calm despite the fire. He stepped closer to the largest cub and placed his hand against its chest. The fur was hot beneath his touch. It's all right. I'm here. You're safe. The cub froze. Its roar cut off mid-sound. It looked down at him, eyes wide. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the fire jumped. The sparks leapt onto the cub's thick fur. But instead of fear, something else happened. The cub shook itself violently, then crouched low. With a single swipe of its massive paw, it smashed the ground. Dust and dirt sprayed upward, covering the flames. The other two cubs followed. They leapt into the fire, rolling, thrashing, smothering the flames with their bodies. The earth quaked beneath their weight. In moments, the circle of fire was gone, buried under rock and dust. When the smoke cleared, Elias stood untouched. The cubs surrounded him, their bodies singed but unharmed, their eyes burning not with fear, but with fury. They turned their glowing eyes toward the outpost. They knew who had caused this. Inside, the aliens panicked. Screens showed 3 alpha cubs glaring straight at their walls. The Rasu commander stumbled back, his voice trembling now. Impossible they protected him. Elias raised his voice, steady and strong. They are not monsters. They are children, and they trust me more than they fear your fire. The cubs rumbled in agreement, pressing closer to him. For the first time in memory, the galaxy's most feared creatures had chosen to fight the fire, not the human beside them. That night, the aliens whispered in silence. Some still feared, some still hated, but all of them had seen the truth. The bond was not luck. It was real, it was growing, and it was unstoppable. The outpost was no longer silent. The test with fire had failed, and fear now ruled the aliens inside. They spoke in hushed tones, but their words carried the same truth. The cubs had chosen the human. The Rasu commander paced the chamber, his claws scratching deep marks in the floor. We must destroy them all, cubs and human. If we do not, he will control a weapon that no fleet can face. The Valen scholar shook his head. Open your eyes. The cubs did not burn him. They did not kill him. They saved him. For the first time, the monsters protected life. But the commander was deaf to reason. He called for soldiers, ships, and weapons. He would strike before the bond grew stronger. Outside, Elias felt the shift in the air. The cubs sensed it too. They prowled around him with tails high, sniffing the wind, growling low. The human knelt, resting his hands on their massive shoulders. They're afraid of you, Elias whispered. Afraid of us. They'll come tonight. The cubs pressed closer. One nudged his arm with a gentle push. Another curled its body around his legs, refusing to leave his side. The bond was no longer a fragile thread. It was a chain of trust, unbreakable. And when the attack came, the cubs were ready. The night split with a scream of engines. Gunships tore through the sky, their lights sweeping across the rocky plain. From their bellies dropped soldiers armed with plasma rifles, armor gleaming under the moons. The outpost watched through trembling screens. The commander barked orders. Kill the human first. The cubs will tear each other apart without him. But the soldiers never reached him. The cubs struck like storms. One leapt high, crashing down on the first squad, its roar scattering soldiers like leaves in wind. Another cub swiped its paw, smashing weapons to pieces, sending fire and sparks across the ground. The third cub shielded Elias, standing tall and fierce, its body blocking every shot aimed at him. The battlefield shook with fury. Plasma bolts flashed, fire roared, but the cubs moved as one. They did not fight for themselves. They fought for the human they had chosen. Elias stood in the center of chaos, his voice steady. Stay close, babies. Stay with me. And they did. One soldier tried to slip past, his rifle raised toward Elias. Before he could fire, the largest cub lunged, jaws snapping shut around the weapon. It broke like a twig. The soldier dropped to the ground, trembling, but instead of killing him, the cub turned away, returning to Elias's side. The aliens watching gasped. The cubs were not only fighting, they were choosing mercy. The battle ended as quickly as it began. The field lay in ruins. Broken weapons smoked on the ground. The soldiers, defeated, crawled back toward their ships. Not one dared look at Elias or the beast beside him. From the sky, the commander's voice cracked through the calms. This cannot be. They are monsters. Elias lifted his head, his voice calm but sharp. No, they are not monsters. They are children who only wanted trust. You feared them, so they became what you feared. But with me, they are something else. They are family. The cubs rumbled in agreement, pressing their heads against him one by one. The outpost fell into silence. For the first time, the galaxy saw alpha cubs not as weapons or monsters, but as beings who could choose. And they had chosen. They had chosen the human. From that day forward, the story spread far beyond Delta IV. Across star systems, the tale of Elias and the cubs was whispered, then spoken, then believed. Some still feared, some still hated, but none could deny the truth. The fiercest creatures in the galaxy had made their choice, and their choice was love. Elias looked at the stars, his hands resting on the warm fur at his sides. He smiled. Good babies, he whispered. The cubs purred, their sound rolling across the night like thunder, gentle thunder that promised the galaxy would never be the same again.